Welcome to the SketchUp for Schools lesson. This is Design Your Dream Home, Part 2, Turning 2D into 3D. This lesson will open using the training file created from Part 1 of this lesson series. If you do plan on using your own file, just make sure you open up this video lesson first. That way, when you go to the menu and click Open, you can open your file and the video file will still play. Also, if you accidentally close out of the lesson, you can simply get it back by launching the video lesson again. So now let's get started turning this 2D model into a 3D file. The starting file for this document should look something like this. In order to convert this into a 3D model, it's good to first group and isolate the 2D floor plan separate from the 3D model. This ensures that the 2D plan is being used as a reference to trace on and draw on top of, instead of being connected and stuck with the 3D geometry. So in order to isolate and separate this, we need to group it. With the Select tool located here, drag a window around the entire model. This will select all of the lines and components previously created in this model. With our cursor hovered over the island, right-click to select Make Group. In part 1 of this series, we made components for objects, which act like cloned objects. Groups, however, simply isolate the geometry. So it's a quick way to just isolate and contain geometry. So go ahead and select Make Group. Groups and components can natively move around and adjust simply by double-clicking on the object to modify it. They could also potentially move if you accidentally click on the Move tool. So to prevent this, let's lock the group. And to do that, right-click with the Select tool on any part of the object, and then select Lock. This will turn the group from being a blue selected item to a red highlighted object. And that basically prevents us from deleting or from moving the object. With the floor plan locked and grouped, we can now create the exterior walls. With the navigational tools, let's use the Orbit tool to drag our cursor and position the model similar to the view that I have shown here. Alternatively, you could click on the Scenes toolbar and click on the bottom right angled view. You can always adjust it too. It's not at your preferred angle. I'll then close the toolbar here. In order to create the exterior walls, we need to create a floor surface for it to draw and push from. With the rectangle tool, start by drawing a rectangle from the top corner here and bring that down to the front corner here. That'll create a surface on the floor here representing the living space. Let's use the rectangle tool again, this time going from this endpoint here, or you could go from this endpoint here and drawing across to the other side. Now we can extrude these surfaces up using the Push-Pull tool. Click on the Push-Pull tool located right here. If any existing surface was pre-selected, do note that the Push-Pull tool will push-pull the pre-selected surface only. So if that's the case, you can always press Escape while in the Push-Pull tool to deactivate the existing pre-selection. You do not need to pre-select an object in order to push-pull it, because as you hover over it with the Push-Pull tool, it will automatically pre-select or highlight, letting you know that it's the surface that you intend to extrude. Hover over the left surface area here, click to start your push-pull, move the cursor up, and let go. Don't click just yet. If you click, that's going to set it in the arbitrary distance that you have here. Instead, we want to be precise and we want this to be 9 feet tall. So type 9 apostrophe and hit enter. That's going to extrude this up now 9 feet from the floor. SketchUp remembers our last push-pull distance, so we can hover over this surface over here and simply double-click to repeat our last push-pull distance. When you're done with the push-pull tool, it's a good habit to hit the space bar on your keyboard or to click on the Select tool just to get back to the Select tool. This is a good way in preventing accidentally clicking and pushing your object into certain distances that we don't want. I'm going to undo that and then hit the space bar or click on the Select tool. We next want to place an opening and a doorway into this location here. And in order to place this doorway in here, we first need to create that opening. So in our model, you can notice and see the 8-foot distance that we have for that opening. To draw an opening for this, let's use not the rectangle tool, but the rotated rectangle tool, which is the second rectangle tool in the drawing tools here. This tool acts slightly different than the rectangle tool in that it is 3 clicks. The first click is on the end point for the first corner. The second click is at the second corner, which we can do here. You need to zoom in closer too, make sure. You don't want to get this point by accident. You want to be on the wall. So click there for the second click. And now for the third click, before we do that third click or that third action, move your cursor up so that you're along this blue axis. And instead of clicking, which would just set it to whatever distance we're at right now, we want to define the actual height. And the height of this doorway or sliding door we want is 80 inches. So simply type 80 and press enter. And it'll update that opening so that is now 8 feet wide by 80 inches tall. With the rectangle in place, we can now take the select tool, single click on that face and press delete on our keyboard. That will allow us to see into that space and create that opening so that we can place a door into that space. A quick way to place a component into the model is by using one created on the 3D warehouse. So let's click on the component library and in the search 3D warehouse, type 8 apostrophe sliding door and press enter. This will show a results of several components that users have created for an 8-foot wide door. This one here looks pretty good. The sliding glass panel by Peter X. Click on the thumbnail to download the model. Move your cursor into the model space and notice where the inserting point is of this object. It looks to be on the bottom left corner. So let's move our cursor as close as we can and try to place it in place. We can't get it right the first time, that's okay. We can just get it close by clicking, and then we can scroll in closer, and then we can move it again from the point that we want to move it from, which is going to be this outside corner by clicking, and then clicking again to set it. That will put that trim of the door flush with the wall. Once we're done with the component, we can also click out of the component library here just to clean up this model space. Binding components in the 3D warehouse can offer a quick way to place detailed items in a model. However, in some cases, creating custom components is preferred. Let's explore how to create a door component that can also glue to any vertical surface. We'll then place this in other locations within the model. Now let's pan and scroll over to this area here where that master bedroom potentially is. And let's say we want a doorway exiting that master bedroom out into this outdoor space. Hovering over the rectangle tool, let's activate the rectangle tool here and click and release somewhere beginning along this edge here. So I'll click and release on that edge, move the cursor up and to the right. And if we look down in our dimension box, it wants to do the width first and then the height second. So in this case, I want a 36, so 36, comma, 80, 80, and then press return or enter. So I want a 36 by 80 inch door. And if you got too close to your existing window, it's quite all right. You can either take the move tool and just move this surface down by taking the select tool and then moving it over, or you can simply undo and take the rectangle tool and try again. So I could even draw it this way, 36, comma, 80, enter. Activate the select tool and double click on the existing door rectangle. Right click on it and select make component. Let's label this 36IN, which is an abbreviation for inch door. We also want to click cut opening. This is a special feature that allows you to replace the existing wall surface with the door because they're parallel and adjacent to each other. Then go ahead and click OK. Now that the component is created, you'll be able to access it from the component panel and place copies of it throughout the model. Orbit over to the other side of the model and view in closer to this entryway area right around where the window symbol is right here and where this vertical line is. It's pretty difficult to see where the existing door is without looking upside down or underneath the model. So a quick way that we can view and see through the model is by turning on a setting called back edges. In the search SketchUp icon, go ahead and type back. And notice view back edges is an option that we can toggle on. It may also be a keyboard shortcut depending on how your system was set up. Click to toggle the visibility of the back edges, and now notice the dotted line of the 2D door swing that is here. Now that we can see into the model, let's click on the component panel. Let's click on the house icon, and let's click on the 36-inch door component that we just created. This will download it to our cursor. And then as we move our cursor into the model, we can now place it in place. However, because it's a glue to component, it's trying to align to not only the wall, but potentially the floor as well. So similar to how we placed the 3D sliding door over here, you may not be able to get it in the correct place right away. So just click to get it along this edge. And then once it's in the model so that we can see it's highlighted blue, then we can click again to move it in place. And that's a really major tip for the move tool. Don't feel like you have to get the movement done in one action. It's always okay to move it once and then maybe move it again. Let's add some detail to this component. And to modify a door component or any component, we first need to activate it. With the select tool active, double click anywhere on the face of the existing component. This will gray out the rest of the model and show a dotted line around the object, letting us know that we're in this component. Another way to double check is to simply single click on the face, and that way it highlights. If I close out of this by clicking, you'll see if I do a single click, it just highlights it, whereas a double click will open. So a lot of times in SketchUp, I will do a double click followed by a single click. And this is just a way to ensure that I'm clicking on the actual face. And with this surface selected, let's actually offset it to create a frame or trim around it. Hover your cursor over the push-pull tool and click on it to activate then the offset tool located here. The offset tool works by hovering over the existing face and seeing where that red square or dotted square is. Click and release to start your offset, but be careful. If your mouse or cursor is very sensitive like mine just was, it may do a very quick offset for you. So if that happens, just go up to undo and try again. Be very careful to click and release without moving your cursor. Then move your cursor inward or outward. And in this case, let's move it inside because I want to offset this inward and I want it to be 6 inches. So right now I'm going to type 6 and press enter. So that's going to offset all 4 edges 6 inches for us. To close out of the component that we just modified, click on the select tool and simply click anywhere outside of the dotted line of the object. You can also close out of our component panel and notice if we orbit around to the other side, we can see that our other component definition updates. Let's further explore creating components and adjusting them to fit within the design of the house. This time, instead of doors, let's create all the 36-inch wide window components. First, we no longer need the back edges, so click on the search SketchUp tool, type in the word back, and check the toggle to turn the visibility back off for back edges. This will make it much easier when creating the guides in the next step. Looking at the model in a similar direction that I have, let's start with this window located right here. With the tape measure tool, begin on this vertical edge and click and release to start drawing a guide. Move your cursor down until you can touch the bottom of the edge right here. This draws a vertical guide right at the start of that window. Click on the guide that we just created and bring that down again to the far end at this endpoint right here and click. That creates the right side vertical guide for us. Now we need 2 horizontal guides. The first one will determine the height of the window off of the floor. So move the cursor to the right just a little bit so that we're on the edge. Click to start the guide. Move the cursor up, and let's type a distance of 3, 6, and press enter. So that will put the bottom of the window 36 inches off of the floor. Scroll out, and now for the height of the window, let's click on the guide we just drew, move the cursor up, and type 44 and press return. If we did this correctly, we'll notice that the 36 inches plus the 44 inches will equal the 80 inches of our existing door that we created over here. Now, just like we created the door, let's create the window by taking the rectangle tool, drawing a rectangle from the intersection here down to the intersection here, activating the select tool, and then double clicking on the rectangle. Right click on that surface and select Make Component. For a name, we can type 36 inch, either put the symbol or type in IN, window. Let's make sure Cut Opening is selected and then click OK. So like the door component, that will create a window component within our model here. With the object pre-selected, click on the Move tool and press Control to toggle it to copy. I'm pressing Control because I'm on a PC. If you're on a Mac, you can press Option or look at what modifier key is used here within your status bar. Click and release on the bottom left-hand edge of this existing window to start your copy. As we go in the red axis here, we can move our cursor down and infer to this point right here. But don't click here, just inference. So hover over and then move your cursor up until you get to this point here. Once you find that dot that you can sort of snap to, click and release to set that in place. Another way that we can do this, if we pan the screen down, you can look at this window right here. We can press Control to toggle it to copy again, or Option on a Mac. Click to start that copy, and notice that the direction that I'm moving is in the red axis. If I find the axis first, I can then hold down Shift and the red dotted line will get bold so that as I move my cursor down, it constrains me to only moving along the red direction. If Shift is difficult to do, you can then use an arrow key on your keyboard. So press and release the right arrow key on your keyboard, and notice regardless of where you are, it will lock in just the red. If you press the left arrow key, it'll lock in the green, and the up arrow key will lock in the blue. So again, this one will be right for red. Move the cursor down and over until I get to this point right here, and then I'll click to set it in place. We no longer need these guides, so one way we can delete these is by clicking the display icon and then clicking Delete Guides. Let's continue adding our windows. So we'll orbit over to this section here, and we can close our display panel as well. To speed up the process of placing these components, we can create some additional guides to help us. So with the tape measure tool, click and release on the bottom edge here, move the cursor up and type in 36 and press enter. Now you could go through and create the vertical guides if necessary, but really all you actually need is this guide here, because we can zoom in a little bit closer. We can click on the component toolbar, click on the 36-inch window, and move our cursor into the model space. As we do that, hover over this endpoint right here. Don't click just yet. Just reference that and then hover up and you'll see that black dotted line. And then once it gets here, you can now click in place to set it. This takes a little bit of practice, so feel free to go around to the other areas of the model and place those windows as well. So again, over here, we'll bring this up 36, click on our component, drop it in the model, hover up, and then click to set it. Orbit around to the other side. Draw another guide with the tape measure tool. You can actually even infer over to the existing guide at the corner to help position that. And then you can click on the window, scroll in a little bit closer, find that endpoint, move your cursor up, and click and release to set it. And let's repeat it one more time, two more times actually, over here. Bring this guide up 36, bring our window in, and click there. And let's do it one last time here. If it's not finding the right point, sometimes your camera position and what you're looking at can affect that. So just orbit and pan, and then try to get a little bit closer, and then move your cursor up. So a lot of times the camera position will dictate how SketchUp wants to snap and interact with some of your other objects. Again, the tip here is to be patient. Moving around and navigating the model, placing those guides, dropping the component in, it takes time. But practice and working with precision will really, really help. So the better you get at zooming in close and moving out a little bit will just make it much more easier to work and navigate within SketchUp. Let's close our components tool panel here and orbit around so that we can see back to the front of the building. If you have any guides in the model, we can delete them. So let's go up to Search SketchUp, or we could click on Display here. We can click Delete All Guides, or in the search, we could type in the word delete, and we can press Delete Guides here as well. Both will do the same exact thing. The house now needs a roof, and we can use the Follow Me tool to create a pitch or profile that we can then trace around the perimeter of the building. Roofs have many different angles and pitches depending on their style, their use, and climate. Angle can be expressed in degrees or as a ratio. To do this, let's first create a profile for the pitch, and we can do that using the Protractor tool. Activate the Tape Measure tool to bring up the subtools where you can see now the Protractor tool. Go ahead and click on that, and the Protractor tool creates a guide along a specific angle. It's a 3-click tool, so the first click determines the pivot point. Move your cursor into this point here, but before you click, you want to make sure that the protractor or the circle is angled in the orientation that you want the triangle to be. And we want our triangle along the red axis. So what you might do as well is just orbit to favor that rect axis more than another. If you're still having a hard time, you can always use the arrow keys to toggle it to lock in the rotation that you want, which I'll do here by clicking on the right arrow key. Now, regardless where I move, it's going to lock in just that red axis, so that now I can make this my first click. So again, that sets the center point. Your second click is going to be your 0 reference angle, so where you're starting from, which in our case is going to be along this horizontal edge. So I can click here to set my second click. Lift the cursor up to begin showing the desired angle. Now I want this to be 30 degrees. So type in 30 and press enter. And that will put that at 30 degrees from this bottom endpoint here. With the guide in place, click on the line tool and draw a line starting from the midpoint here, going up vertically in the blue axis until you hit the guideline where it says on line. Click to finish that line and then continue the line down to draw the triangle for the pitch right back to the starting endpoint here. You'll know it's correct when it generates the face of that triangle for that surface. Now that we have the profile in place, we need the path to also be around the perimeter of the model. But this edge here that breaks the two main areas will prevent us from having it follow the entire perimeter of the model. So click on the eraser and then click to erase the edge of that top surface. If I undo, you can also take the select tool and you can just single click on that edge as well and then press delete. Both will remove that edge. The follow me tool works in a few ways, but the easiest way to use it is to pre-select the path first. So take the select tool and click on the face of the roof first. then activate the Follow Me tool. The Follow Me tool can be found in the Offset tool or the Push-Pull tool just next to it, which is this icon here. So click to activate the Follow Me tool. And now all you have to do is click on the profile shape, which is the triangle. When we do that, it's going to automatically trace the entire perimeter of the model. I'll undo here for a second. If you do not pre-select this surface, you can manually follow by clicking on the profile and moving your cursor to manually hover around all of the edges of the model. But as you can see, that can sometimes create errors if you click on the wrong edge. So it is best to take the Select tool and simply pre-select the path first, and then click Follow Me and single click on the profile. This way it ensures that it's only following the pre-selected face. With the model taking shape, let's add textures and materials to give it some character and style. One of the first ways that we can do that is by adding a roofing material. Let's click on the materials panel here. Right now it's going to show all of the materials currently being used in the model. What we want to do is we want to browse for other materials that we can then import. For example, if we scroll down, we can click on roofing and we can select a desired roofing material. Click on it to make it active, and then click on the surface that you want it to be applied to. Be sure to orbit around and apply it to all the surfaces that you need. In addition to that, we can scroll up and go to brick cladding and siding, and we can select this white siding material and click on the wall surface to apply it into the model as well. Orbit around and apply it to all of the wall surfaces within the file. We can even apply transparency to our doors, similar to the sliding door that was created from the component we grabbed from the 3D warehouse. However, be careful when you apply materials to a component or to a group. Let me show you first what not to do. If I click on glass and mirrors, this blue material has transparency. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it to the outside door component. And you'll notice it shrink wraps it not only to the glass surface, but also the frame around it. In addition, it doesn't apply it to the other definition. So the act of being outside of the component doesn't actually apply the material inside of the component itself. So let's undo and let's do it the correct way. Take the Select tool, and when you're applying materials to a group or a component, double click so that you're inside of that object. You'll know you're inside because everything else will fade away or ghost out as well. Click on the desired material. So in glass and mirrors, let's select the blue material here. Click and release on that material, and now click on it to apply it into the model. Notice that not only does it apply here, but when we close out of that component with the Select tool, you can also notice it take effect to this one here. And that is really why components are great, because when they change one, they change every instance of them. We can further illustrate this with the windows in our model. With the Select tool, double click inside of one of the windows. It doesn't matter which one it is. I'll select this one here. And then in the drawing tools here, I'm going to select the Offset tool. Let's create a frame around the window that is 3 inches. So we'll click and release to start the offset, move our cursor in, type in 3, and press enter. And now with the paint bucket, we can apply the transparent blue material that represents our glass, and we can apply it to the surface here. Also note that because this was the previously used material, you actually don't need to click on it to activate it again. SketchUp will use whatever was previously used to then apply it. So you can always see your active material here. Next, take the Select tool, click outside of the model, and zoom out to take a look at our file. We no longer need this guide from creating the profile, so you can simply take the select tool and select it, and then press delete. Now, sometimes when you have components, you want certain ones to be unique so that they're no longer linked to all the other ones because they have their own material or color, or they may even change size and shape. Let's look at how we can create and modify a component by making it unique. Take a look at the two windows located over here on the left part of the model. Let's zoom in a little bit closer and pan over. And with the select tool, single click on the left component, hold down Shift, and single click on the right component. This will add both of them to our selection. With them pre-selected, we can right click and select Make Unique. This will now make a new component definition so that these two are linked together and no longer linked to the existing components. For example, if I double click inside now one of the existing ones, notice it's changing those windows, but not the two that we made unique. So let's now make a change to this window. And in this living area, we don't need the window to be 36 inches off of the floor. We can make it a little bit lower since it's in the public space of our house. With the select tool, double click inside of either window component. Doesn't matter which one. Then drag a window around the bottom two edges of the window frame, being sure not to be short here. Otherwise that won't pre-select the edges. We want to make sure that we're selecting this edge here in addition to this edge here. You could also use the select tool with Shift by single clicking as an alternative way of pre-selecting it. Activate the move tool and click here to start moving the window down. As we're moving down, be careful not to move over. So making sure we're moving in the green axis, type in 16 and press enter. This again is going to make our window taller and closer to the floor. And because it's a unique component, notice it's only affecting this one and the one to the left that is identical to it. Let's continue to make some changes to the architecture. This time, we're going to make some changes to the roof. Currently, the two short sides of the roof are called hip roofs. A hip roof is when the end of the pitch of the roofs are angled. What I want instead is a gable roof, which is when the shorter ends here are actually vertical and parallel to the existing wall. To convert a hip roof to a gable, we first want to zoom in closer to one of the roof areas. We can also close any panels that we previously had open just to make the interface a little bit cleaner. Make sure that nothing is pre-selected. So with the select tool, I'm just going to click somewhere in the white model space. And then with the move tool, I'm going to activate it. So with the move tool active, I want you to click on this endpoint right here. Click to start moving that point, and notice you're now moving the roof into any arbitrary location. This can get messy, so be careful. We want to move in the red axis. So press and release the right arrow key to lock in the red. Move your cursor down until you can touch the endpoint here along the wall edge. Should be a movement of 8 feet, as you can see down here in your value control box. Go ahead and click when you find that. Now notice the surface that's missing on our roof. Sometimes when creating more complex geometry, SketchUp can have a hard time filling in that face or surface. So this is a simple fix by just taking the line tool and tracing it back in to heal the surface. Take the move tool again over here. We can move this edge over, press the left arrow key to lock in the green, and then click. And then lastly, with the paint bucket, let's bring back in our roofing material that is missing from this angled surface here. We can take the eraser and erase this edge here, and this edge here, and even this additional little edge that happens to get our gable roof. And while we're looking at the siding now, let's change the color. So if we click back on the materials tool panel here, go ahead and click on the home icon. That's going to show all the materials currently being used. Scroll down and click to activate the siding material. With it activated, we can scroll up and now we can hit this button here, which is the Edit Material button. When we click on that, we are now given this option to name the material, to change its scale. We can even adjust the opacity, but what we want is to colorize it. Click on the gray swatch located here, and that will now bring up a color wheel. Scroll down and use the slider to move the color over, and then also move the dot to the desired brightness and hue that you're looking for. When you're done, press the Done icon located right here. This is also important to note that any material in your model can also be colorized to make it what you want. So when you're looking at materials from objects on the 3D warehouse, or even materials that are part of SketchUp as you browse, just note that you can always colorize them. Now it's time to show off our hard work. So let us export the model so that we can share it. Let's first close the tool panel on the top right here. Using the navigational tools, let's orbit and pan and find the desired perspective view that we want of our model. So something like this looks pretty good. Let's export this out as an image by using the download feature. Click on the menu icon located here in the top left, select download, and then select PNG. PNG is an image format type similar to a JPEG. Click on the PNG icon, and now you can specify the resolution, so the pixels of your image based off of what your browser is or what your final deliverable export needs to be. If you didn't have quite the right view, you can always pick one of these default views as well, or you can even orbit and navigate to change your view here. When you're done, just click Export as PNG. Go ahead and click on Export, and then save the file on your computer to wherever your desired folder is. Just make sure you name it and click Save. Congratulations for following along with this SketchUp for Schools lesson. You can now play around with creating your own exterior models with custom materials, doors, windows, and any roof type you can imagine. As a bonus, fill up the model with components from the 3D warehouse to make it unique. Add things like a pergola, some shutters, some window planters, and some outdoor seatings. The options are unlimited. You can also continue on with part 3, which is prep the model to print, where you'll learn how to get your model ready to print and then assemble it as a paper cutout model. Thanks again, and enjoy SketchUpping.